My fiancé told me he was too burned out to talk to me. Then I found out he was sending another woman good morning texts before I even woke up. I'm 28. My fiancé, Caleb, is 31. We had been together for 6 years. Engaged for 8 months. We rented a house together outside Columbus and had a dog named Milo. Our wedding was supposed to be next spring. I thought we were tired. I did not know I was being replaced. Around November, Caleb started acting different. Not dramatic. He did not suddenly hide his phone or disappear overnight. He just became less available to me. He stopped sending me stupid videos during work. He stopped asking what I wanted for dinner. He would come home, kiss my forehead, and say he needed quiet. His job had changed. He was managing a new team at a distribution company. Longer hours, more responsibility. He said he felt like he had lost himself. I believed him, so I tried to help. I cooked almost every night. I handled Milo's vet appointments. I did the laundry. I stopped asking Caleb to come grocery shopping because he said crowds drained him. When he stayed late after work, I kept dinner warm. When he barely spoke, I told myself not to make his stress about me. I even apologized once for asking if we could spend a Saturday together. He said, "I can't keep proving I love you every time I'm exhausted." I said, "I'm not asking you to prove anything." He said, "It feels like you are." So I backed off. That is the part I keep thinking about. I gave him more space because he told me he was struggling. He used that space for someone else. Her name was Brianna, 26. She worked in his department. I knew the name because Caleb mentioned her occasionally, always casually. Brianna messed up the schedule. Brianna brought donuts. Brianna hates the new supervisor. Nothing that sounded important. Then she started appearing more often. Caleb would say a group from work was getting drinks. Brianna was there. There was a weekend charity event. Brianna asked if he was going. His team planned a bowling night. Brianna told him it would be boring if he skipped it. I noticed. Of course I noticed. But I had been cheated on in college. Caleb knew that. I had spent years trying not to become the suspicious girlfriend who saw danger in every woman. So I said nothing. One night, Caleb was getting ready to go out with coworkers. I asked who was going. He named 4 people. Brianna was one of them. I said, "She seems to invite you to a lot of things." He looked at me and said, "Are we doing this?" I said, "Doing what?" He said, "The jealous coworker thing." I immediately felt stupid. I said, "No, forget it." He kissed me and said, "Good, because I really don't have energy for drama right now." He left. I stayed home with Milo. After that, I tried harder not to notice. That sounds ridiculous now, but I did. I ignored the way Caleb smiled at his phone. I ignored that he started taking it into the bathroom. I ignored that he would answer messages during dinner after telling me he was too mentally drained for conversation. One night I asked, "Who are you talking to?" He said, "Work." I said, "At 10:30? He said, "My team doesn't stop existing because you want attention." I went quiet. He sighed and said, "See, now you're upset." I said, "I didn't say anything." He said, "You don't have to." Again, I became the problem without actually doing anything. The turning point happened because of Milo. Caleb took him for a walk and left his tablet on the kitchen counter. I was using it to check a recipe. A message appeared across the top. Brianna. It said, "Sleep well, handsome. Try not to dream about your favorite coworker." I stared at it. Then another message appeared. A heart. I knew Caleb's passcode. We had always known each other's. I opened the conversation. People can argue about that if they want. I invaded his privacy. Fine. What I found was still there before I looked. They messaged constantly. Not 5 times a day. Not work questions. Hundreds of messages some days. Good morning. Good night. Pictures of coffee. Pictures from lunch. Inside jokes. Compliments. She called him handsome. He called her trouble. She sent him a meme about falling for someone at work. He replied, "Too late." I kept scrolling. There were messages from days when Caleb had barely answered me. I would text, "Do you need anything from the store?" 3 hours later, he would say, "No." During those same 3 hours, he sent Brianna 47 messages. One morning, I had texted him, "Good luck with the meeting. Love you." He did not respond until lunch. He had already sent Brianna, "Morning, beautiful. Go scare everyone." I felt sick. When Caleb came back, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the tablet. He saw my face. Then he saw the screen. He said, "You went through my messages?" I said, "Who is Brianna?" He said, "You know who she is." I said, "No, apparently I don't." He reached for the tablet. I moved it away. He said, "Give me that." I said, "Did you tell her goodnight every night while telling me you needed space?" He said, "It's not what you think." I said, "You wrote 'too late' under a joke about falling for a coworker." He said, "It was a joke." I asked, "Is calling her beautiful a joke?" He said, "That's how we talk." I asked, "Is telling her you miss her a joke?" He said, "You are reading everything in the worst possible way." I said, "Then give me the good way." He could not. For the first hour, Caleb insisted nothing happened. I said I had not asked if they had sex. He kept saying, "I never touched her." I said, "Why is that the only line you care about?" He said, "Because that's cheating." I said, "So everything before sex is free?" He told me I was emotional. I told him I had just discovered my fiancé had a second relationship in his phone. He said, "She's a friend." I said, "Then why did you lie about how much you talked to her?" He said, "Because I knew you'd react like this." There it was. The excuse people use when the lie gets caught. I lied because you would have been upset by the truth. As if that makes the lie reasonable. I asked him to show me the rest of the messages. He said I had already violated his privacy enough. I asked if they had been alone together. He said, "Sometimes we get lunch." We had agreed years ago that one-on-one lunches with someone who was openly flirting were a boundary. Caleb had been the one who suggested it after my college relationship. I reminded him. He said, "That was different." I asked, "How?" He said, "Because I know my intentions." I said, "And I was supposed to trust intentions you were hiding from me?" He walked away. I followed him into the living room. I said, "I carried this house for months because I thought you were depressed." He said, "I was struggling." I said, "You had energy for her." He said, "She didn't pressure me." That hurt more than the messages. I said, "I was cooking your dinner and taking care of your dog." He said, and then asking why I was distant. I said, "Because you were distant." He said, "Exactly." I just looked at him. He had turned my reaction to his withdrawal into the reason he withdrew. The next day, I called my sister. I told her everything. She wanted me to leave immediately. My mother said I should postpone the wedding, but not throw away 6 years over texts. Caleb's brother called me and said Caleb was an idiot, but insisted he had never physically cheated. Everyone had an opinion. Caleb still would not call it an affair. He said emotional affair was internet language. He said Brianna made work easier. He said she understood the pressure he was under. I asked, "Did you ever tell her you were pulling away from me?" He said yes. I asked, "Did you tell me you were getting closer to her?" He said no. I said, "Then she knew more about our relationship than I knew about yours." He told me that was unfair. I said, "No, it is exactly what happened." For 3 days, I asked questions. When did it start? Who said I love you first? Why did he call her beautiful? Why did he delete some messages? Why did he tell me he was barely using his phone? At first, he answered. Then he got angry. On the fourth night, he said, "We have talked about this enough." I said, "You had months to know what was happening. I have had 4 days." He said, "I already apologized." I said, "An apology does not give me the missing information." He said, "What do you want me to do? Bleed?" I said, "I want you to sit in the discomfort you created long enough for me to understand it." He laughed. Not because it was funny, because he was done. Then he said, "If you can't move past this, maybe we shouldn't get married." I said, "Okay." He stared at me. I think he expected me to panic. I think he expected me to promise I would stop asking questions. Instead, I took off my ring and put it on the table. He said, "Seriously?" I said, "You told another woman good morning and good night every day. You called her beautiful. You told her you loved her. You hid your lunches. You lied about your phone. Then you gave me 4 days to get over it." He said, "Nothing physical happened?" I said, "Then congratulations. You destroyed our engagement without kissing her." That is the line his family is angry about. His mother says I was cruel. My mother still thinks I acted too fast. My sister says I should have packed before he came home. We are still in the same house for now. Separate rooms. The wedding is canceled. Caleb says he has stopped talking to Brianna outside work. I do not know if that is true. I also do not know if it matters anymore. Yesterday, he asked if I really believed 6 years meant nothing. I said, "They meant enough that I carried you when I thought you couldn't carry yourself." He said, "I never asked you to do that." I said, "No, you just watched me do it while giving your best energy to someone else." He did not answer. Maybe people will say reading his messages was wrong. It was. Maybe people will say I should have confronted him earlier instead of staying quiet. Probably. But I spent months trying not to be jealous. I gave him space because he asked for it. I believed him when he said he was too tired to connect. And the entire time, he was connecting. Just not with me. I don't think cheating starts with a kiss. I think it starts when you give someone else the intimacy you are deliberately withholding from your partner, then lie so you can keep doing it. Caleb disagrees. He says no physical contact means he stayed faithful. So maybe that is the question. Was I wrong to end an engagement over messages? Or did he end it the moment another woman started getting the version of him I was told no longer existed?